Regional Medical Center's caregivers are here to provide care to you and your loved ones. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com. Wednesday morning, June 16th, 2021. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin. Thanks for tuning in to KSJE. We're over the air in San Juan County, 90.9 FM, over the air in Durango, Colorado at 103.3 FM, and we're streaming everywhere on Earth, including your smart speaker, from our website, KSJE.com. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program. It is streaming live this morning to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. So we're glad that you are with us, because coming up this morning, we're going to talk politics this morning. All politics is local. So the local chairman of the San Juan County Democrat Party is my guest. Eli Pavlik will be joining me here in the next few moments right here on KSJE. So stay tuned for that, everybody. Then later on this hour at 8:50 a.m., it is Wednesday, of course. We always hear from Dr. Mike Haddabaugh. He'll be coming in with a best of episode from the Encouragement Lab. That's later on this hour at 8:50 a.m. on KSJE. And next hour, it is Roving with the Arts, our classical music program with Mick Hess. And on this Wednesday, Mick introduces us to another local favorite. And this week, Kristen Chen is on the program. She's a local pianist and teacher. He'll be talking with Kristen Chen coming up today at 9:06 on KSJE. That'll take us to 10:30, and right on Four Corners, our local and regional author program. Author David Selby from Aztec is on the program this week, speaking with Tracy Hales-Vass about his book called Mika. That's coming up today at 10:30 on KSJE. And don't forget, in addition to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, you can also connect with us on our Instagram page as well. Outside our studios here at San Juan College this morning, it is a partly sunny morning, and temperatures are 72 degrees at the moment. It's going to be another hot one today. We're expecting increasing sun with a high later on today of 101 degrees. Overnight, the winds may pick up with a low of 67. Then tomorrow, partly sunny skies on Thursday with a high of 98. Maybe we'll see a scattered shower overnight Thursday with a low of 66, and maybe another chance for a scattered shower on Friday with a high of 95 degrees and a low of 65, but more heat for the weekend. As you can see, upper 90s for Saturday and Sunday and lower 60s for overnight lows. Well, let me turn to my guest, who is here with me this morning. The new chairman of the San Juan County Democrat Party, Eli Pavlik, is here. Welcome back to KSJE. Good to have you here.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott.
You bet. Great to have you along. And we were talking a little bit about you becoming the chair of the Democrat Party. This happened maybe just a couple of months ago.
Yep, just a few months ago. So we're just kind of getting into the swing of things.
Right.
But we're looking forward to this upcoming cycle that'll take us all the way through 2022.
Very good.
And we're looking forward to building this movement and continuing to support the Biden administration and the governor's administration and see what we can get done.
Okay. Now, you seem like a nice guy. What's a nice guy like you doing in a business like politics?
Well, thanks for saying that.
And I guess nice guys can be in politics would be one answer.
Yeah, I think nice guys can be in politics. I think nice people of all kinds can be in politics because, I think in a perfect world, what leads you into politics is recognizing that there are things about your community that are working and other things that could be better. And people on all sides of the spectrum in politics feel that way and are drawn into the system because of that. I
may be too cynical to believe that 100%, but I appreciate you saying it, and I can see that there are glimmers of hope, I guess, in politics. Maybe after what we've been through the last several years, many administrations. I don't want to single anyone out, but I think maybe I'm a bit more as a cynical journalist than I should be. So it's nice to hear you say something like that.
Well, and the thing about being my age is that maybe I've got a little naivety left in me, and maybe that's good. You know,
I'm not.
we have
I think
to.
so.
We have to.
A fresh set of eyes.
We have to. We have to have hope and continue to believe that we can make the changes that are necessary, or else, you know, we don't want to give up. We don't want to give up on our communities.
I'm glad to hear you say that, and I'm glad that you're not kind of disappointed or disgusted with the way politics have been the last few months.
I'm disappointed and
years.
disgusted with all, you know, and not just with the other party. You know, there are moments where I'm disappointed and disgusted with people in my own party. But you have to find a way. You have to find a way to fit in. You have to build a framework, and you have to build a team, and you have to keep your eyes on the prize. Which ultimately, the eyes on the prize are not power or winning or owning somebody. The prize is people having health care, people sending their kids to good schools, people having safety and security in their own homes, in their communities, having fun stuff to do on the weekends. Ultimately, that's what we all want. And so that's the prize. And there are days of disappointment, there are days of disgust, and there are days of true fear, like we saw in January. But what you really want is to stay focused on trying to improve people's lives in small, medium, and large ways. And I think politics remains a vehicle where that's possible to do, and that's what draws me to it.
Gotcha. Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that, and I think that's important to be able to keep that in perspective and to work towards those goals. I think those are admirable goals for everybody, and no matter what party we're talking about, and it could be many other parties as well. But it's nice to hear someone in your position as a chairman say those types of things, and that brings me to the Democrat Party. We have kind of a unique situation in our state in that New Mexico is controlled pretty much by the Democrat Party. Both houses of the legislature have a Democrat majority. The governor's mansion, Governor Lujan Grisham, is a Democrat, just announced her bid for re-election next year. But in San Juan County, it's kind of a different story. You are much of a minority party here, and a lot of our local politicians are with the other party. And so that has to be a bit of a challenge for the chairman of the Democrat Party.
Yeah, it's totally a challenge, and a good one. I think it's important to have inputs coming from all sides. Part of the job here in this county as a chairman of the Democrats is to do a little bit of translation. You know, as you know, and we see this nationally and we see this locally. There's this widening gulf between the way urban people vote and advocate for their issues, and the way that rural people, and in this context we would describe San Juan County and Farmington as more of a rural, as opposed to a thick urban center like Albuquerque.
Right.
And
they're not thick; they're just big boned.
That's right. That's right.
Go ahead.
We love Albuquerque,
yes,
but our community has needs and important things happening here. And I think increasingly there's this feeling, and this feeling is familiar, I think, to people that live in this area, where we're being left behind by the people that are making decisions from San Francisco or from New York City or even from places like Albuquerque and Santa Fe. And you know, the state government in Santa Fe is, as you said, controlled largely by Democrats. The governor and both houses of our legislature are controlled by Democrats. And I do not believe that those folks don't care about San Juan County. I don't believe that we're being trampled on or overruled by those folks in Santa Fe in the state government. But I think there is a bit of a communication disconnect between our community and folks that are coming from Santa Fe and Albuquerque, because they don't necessarily have a full understanding of the range of issues that we're facing here and just how important our needs are. And I don't.
Pardon me for interrupting, but I don't think we're alone in that. I think a lot of folks who maybe live outside the Rio Grande corridor in our state maybe wonder how much folks in Santa Fe and Albuquerque are listening to them. It doesn't have to be Northwest New Mexico. Yeah,
I totally agree, and I think, but I think the answer to that is not to fight them or to set up this like us against them, rural versus urban dichotomy. I think the answer to that is to communicate with each other more effectively. And one of the things that I think creates more effective communication between areas like ours and legislators and the governor in Santa Fe is a less abrasive attitude. You know, sometimes I worry that the folks that we're sending to Santa Fe from this county are not effectively working with the Democratic majority in the state legislature. And if you're not effectively working with the Democratic majority in the state legislature, you're not legislating, right? I mean, if our state legislators from this area want to get anything done, they're working with the Democratic legislature, and so
They have to.
right. There's no Republican-controlled legislature in New Mexico right now,
Right.
and so you have to figure out, well, are we effectively advocating for our community? Are we sitting down at the table with these people? And if not, what are we going to do differently about that? Because we
Right.
do need to make sure that our needs are being heard. We have specific, very specific, we all know, crucial issues that are facing us right now in this county, and we have to be having those conversations.
And I think that's a word that's maybe become lost at all levels of politics recently, whether it's local or state or federal, is that word compromise. It seems like, if you're in the majority party, maybe you're not as willing maybe to compromise with folks from the minority party because you don't need their votes to pass things, and you're not needing to maybe have those conversations as much as it would be nice to talk and exchange ideas and maybe work something out so that maybe everybody could get behind a piece of legislation or policy. But it seems like compromise is kind of thrown out the window in many instances, to me.
Yeah, that's a tough thing, and this is a conversation that we're having nationally right now too. It's like, okay, what is there an intrinsic value to compromise? Is bipartisanship and compromise a value in itself, or is it a vehicle to which we can use to get to a better policy outcome?
Right.
And
or is it a stalling tactic to say, yes, let's talk about this and let's keep talking about it and keep talking about it until the time runs out and there's a new election, maybe some things have changed and you haven't done anything.
Right, and this is the question that we have to figure out. And on some big issues, there are issues on which I don't really feel like I want to compromise because I have decided where I stand.
Sure.
And plenty of politicians are like that. But I think the value of compromise and bipartisanship is that people from the other side of the spectrum or who disagree with you on political issues, whatever they may be, are coming up with good ideas in other areas or in other issues. And if you've created a world in which you can't talk to those people at all because of issue A, B, and C, there might be a really fantastic idea on issue F that's coming out of some part of the state that's unlike yours, or coming from some politician that's very much unlike you. And if you don't have a channel open because of some toxicity in some other area, we might miss out on that opportunity to grow. And so, I think in that way there is a intrinsic value to bipartisanship, compromise, or at the very least cooperation, or having those channels open.
Right, and that's what saddens me, I think, is the immediate shutdown of anybody saying anything because of the letter after their name, whether it's an R or a D or an I or an L or whatever the case may be. It just saddens me that, we just dismiss them. We don't even let them talk or don't even listen to them talk because of that letter after their name, and how could they possibly have anything to contribute to the conversation because they're from that party, and you fill in the blank of whatever that means.
Yeah, and everybody knows politics has gotten increasingly polarized, increasingly awkward and difficult. We don't like to talk about it with people that don't agree with us. We like to live in our Facebook bubbles where we're seeing posts from people that are just like us, and it's bad and it's sad. But if I will put in a quick plug for the Biden administration and for Joe Biden specifically as a person, I think his whole sort of thing is, I'm Joe Biden and I talk to everybody. And you've seen it over the last few weeks. The Biden administration is trying to put together a large infrastructure package, which we can talk about. But he's having meetings with senators from across the spectrum, and whether he will put together a large bipartisan compromise package or whether the Democratic majority in the Senate will get something through on a party line vote, I think Biden as a person, constitutionally as a person, I think it's important to him to have these conversations across the aisle. And there are some in my party that wish he would do that a little bit less. But if you like the compromise and you want somebody to turn the temperature down a little bit, I would suggest that that's something Joe Biden as president likes to try to do.
Right, and that's all true. I was listening to you very carefully, trying to pick out anything that maybe was not factual, and everything you said was true. And I think no matter who the president was, if any president was making those overtures to the other party, I think is a positive sign, which I appreciate. So I think that's a good thing. And he is talking to groups of Republicans to try to come forward with some type of infrastructure package, which is nice to see. Whether we get there, I don't know. As you said, who knows? I want to go back to what you said a little bit about state politics, and that was kind of the other party, and with the Democrats in power in the governor's office and the state legislature. And so I know there are some folks maybe listening to us right now, Eli, saying, but that party, that Democrat Party and the governor, her policies are killing the jobs here in San Juan County. And how can we support this job-killing initiatives when, my uncle, my father, my mother, her job is on the line? Maybe it's extractive industry, maybe it's something else that has gone away. And that's a real personal and economic reality for those families.
Yeah. So, right. And we are no stranger to the complex crisis that we're facing, and I would call it a crisis as a community. And I would suggest that the governor is no stranger to that too. I think sometimes, as we've discussed, that there's a communication breakdown that makes us feel like we don't see her as much, like we're not hearing from her, we don't have as many opportunities to sit down at a table with the governor as somebody that might from Santa Fe or from Albuquerque. But I would disagree with somebody who's of the impression that the governor doesn't care about what's happening in San Juan County. I think the pandemic was one of the biggest challenges that you could face as a leader like a governor is to figure out in a moment where the science is becoming clearer every day, but really, we just didn't know as time went on all of the information that we would have wanted to know. And she was making difficult decisions, and she shut down the state and ultimately reopened the state. And we had mask mandates, and we had businesses shut down, and there's no question about it, Scott. We had people losing their jobs, we had people unemployed, we had businesses closing forever due to this pandemic. And I would suggest to folks who are disappointed with the governor's actions or with how the whole thing played out, that look at this last legislative session that we just had in January, February. And what you saw was a state legislature and a governor's office that were hyper-focused on recovery, focused on getting money into people's pockets, providing scaffolding for businesses to get back on their feet, and then providing that future building of things like schools and new industries in different areas. We had money pumping in from the state government due to this last legislative session that we're going to see in our communities, and I think that's good. And I think the governor understands what we're looking at here in San Juan County, and she's serious about that.
Right, and I would hope that's true. And I would just challenge you a little bit to say, we've invited her numerous times to come on with me program for as short a period of time as she can allow, and we're still asking. We're still waiting. Well, I know she's very busy, and I understand that, but I do think it would mean a lot to our corner of the state if we could hear our governor talking to local residents about local issues, not filtered through maybe a statewide media outlet that's 200 miles away. And I think that's some of the frustration, at least as a journalist, that I see when trying to speak with them. Her cabinet secretaries have been very available to us, which we appreciate, and hearing from them, of course, is always great. But again, the buck stops with her. And I know she's busy, but we'll keep asking.
Yeah, and we won't let her off the hook, Scott. And I'm asking. Consider
when you
me.
Talk to her next.
Consider me asking.
Let her know.
I wish
we'd love to talk to her.
I wish I had a direct line, but I think part of the responsibility, if you're the chairman of the Democratic Party in San Juan County, is to hold your own people accountable and say, no, you need to be getting out here and you need to be talking with us here in the community because we vote for you. And even those of us that don't vote for you, we need to be having these conversations with you right here in San Juan County. And I will say, of course, the governor wants to come out and wants to spend time with us, but you and me both. Let's make sure it happens.
That would be great. And of course, it's just unfortunate. Then you get the other argument that says, well, San Juan County didn't vote in a majority for her in her election, so she's not going to come and talk to us.
Well, we Democrats try our best to not we don't think that way.
Right.
We are for the people. And when we're not for the people, that's when we need to challenge ourselves to be even better. Because it doesn't matter who you voted for. We're trying to build the communities and states that make sense for everybody.
So let me ask you about that. Let me ask you about the party and about the local Democrat Party, because again, as I mentioned, you're not the majority party here in this county, but I think the Democrat Party may be growing in membership, and I don't know that to be a fact. Maybe you do, or maybe you have plans to grow the party membership. But do you see this as maybe a growth opportunity for the Democrat Party in San Juan County?
We absolutely do. I think we're in this moment politically in this country and locally too, where the Republican Party is having for lack of a better word, an intense conversation amongst themselves about where they stand on things like democracy and whether people should be allowed to vote, and whether our elections are stolen or legitimate. And in this moment, I think it's very important for the Democratic Party to show some leadership and say, well, actually, this is what government could look like. What we could do, if you guys all want, if the voters all want, is we could have this government that is, not as corrupt. And we could have this government where we're passing laws and getting money into the pockets of people, or we're building long-term strategies that are going to create the energy of the future, the jobs of the future. We're going to build the schools that are going to educate the future leaders of the future. And so I think this is a key moment for the Democratic Party and the political left in general to say, while those guys are doing their infighting, here's our vision. Like, here's what this could look like 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And so I do look at this next couple of years as an important recruiting opportunity. And I think the biggest thing that we can do to recruit people to the party is to demonstrate good leadership at the national, state, and local level. And so that's one of the things that we're the most focused on.
Understood. Let me make this point to our listeners and viewers who are watching us this morning that we will make an invitation to the Republican Party in San Juan County to come on this program for equal time. It's not mandated, it's not necessary, but I think it's important as we have this conversation to allow the other side, the other major political party in our county, to have this opportunity to talk to our audiences as well, as you are this morning. And so I can certainly appreciate that, and I'm sure they would have some things to say. One thing you mentioned that I do want to ask you about, you mentioned getting money into the pockets of people and things like that, and that's maybe one thing that sometimes Democrats are criticized for, because it's other people's money, or whose money is it, or tax and spend, and all these types of things that we hear about. And there is that conversation about how generous does the government need to be to make sure everybody is cared for, has a roof over their head, has education, all those things. And there are some really important conversations I think we need to have in this country about what we spend. But there are some folks that feel, you're on your own. You get here, you're here in this country, you have all these opportunities, and you make it what you will. And some people are more successful than others, should the government be in charge of ensuring that everybody moves up at the same rate.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fundamental debate about our politics, and one that I welcome, really. I think that's a good debate. I think the debate gets pretty heated pretty fast when you bring in words that you avoided using, but that I will use right now, like socialism and communism, right? But I think if you really take a step back and think about the things that we're talking about, okay? Here's where I would suggest that we start, right? We've got people making $10s and $20 billion every year. You know their names: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates. And we've got people whose lives fall apart at the seams if they have a tooth that needs to be taken out, because they literally cannot pay the bill. So in Europe...
How does that happen in the same country? That's, I guess, my question.
Right. And so, I would point to, I would say that's unfettered capitalism, or I would say that's an uncontrolled situation where some people have it all, and some people don't. And what I would start with is, I'll get called a socialist, and every Democrat will get called a socialist. But I would say, why don't we have universal health care? Why can't we get everybody at least to a point where if you feel sick, you can go to the doctor? If the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we can't always control when we get sick, and sometimes really scary things happen to our health, and it can strike anybody. And if my mom had coronavirus, or if my coworker has coronavirus, I want them to go to the hospital, or I want them to go get tested. I want them to get help. And if they're worried about their bills, or if they might go broke because they can't pay for it, that's really scary, and that's unhealthy to other members of my family or other people in my workplace. So, plenty of European countries do it. All of the other major industrialized countries in the world have universal health care. We could do it in the United States. It wouldn't ruin everybody. We wouldn't have our freedoms taken away. We would just be able to go to the hospital when we felt sick.
But it's expensive, I think, is one of the arguments from the other side. And how do you do it? And how do you make it affordable for everybody if you want to do it that way? And I know there are many different models, I guess, is then the next step in the conversation of what could work in this country, and different types of models of universal health care.
Right, and this is the point in the conversation where I'd like us to start. Let's say, okay, how are we going to do it? How are we going to get to this goal? Let's compare ourselves to these European countries, or let's get to a point where we're having this conversation. But this is unfortunately not the conversation that we're having right now. We're having a conversation about all kinds of other craziness and whether the masks work or not. And I'd like to get our politics to a point where we are having a very serious sit-down conversation about, okay, are we going to raise taxes on the wealthiest corporations? Are we going to raise taxes on the wealthiest individuals? Somebody that ran for president last cycle, Elizabeth Warren, has a plan to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% by, I think she said, 2 pennies to the dollar. I don't remember the name because I'm not a tax policy expert, but basically what it means is that if you're making above like $400,000 a year or above $1 million a year, you get taxed at a higher rate on the money above that you're making.
Right.
Okay, that seems like a place that we could start. The richest people could help the poorest of us have some health care. And we all benefit from something like that. Right.
No, I hear you, and I remember her saying that, and it kind of made sense to me. And I think even some of those wealthy Americans said, "Yes, please, please tax me. I don't mind paying extra on top of the millions that I already make. I will squeak by with my $2 million salary if you tax me more above $400,000 or whatever the case may be." So that's interesting. But yes, I think that would be a nice conversation to have with everybody around the table, not just Democrats, but I mean other parties represented as well.
And some tax policy experts
in
place of me, perhaps.
That's okay. That's all right. Before we run out of time, Eli, I would like to talk with you a little bit about an upcoming golf tournament that the party is having, and you're looking for golfers and sponsors and folks to come out and play the course.
That's right. Our upcoming tournament is on July 10th. It's a golf scramble at Riverview Golf Course in Kirtland. We're very excited about this event. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be really hot.
Right.
And it's going to be outside. And so we're going to have a fun time. We're looking for sponsors at different levels, $250, $150, and $50 level sponsorships. And any individual or business or political campaign or what have you that's interested in sponsoring will get thanked on our social media and at the various holes on the course and on the carts and so forth. And we're looking for players. It's $100 to play, $400 for a team. And we're gonna kick the thing off at about 7:30 in the morning out at Kirtland on July 10th. It's Saturday.
Okay.
So if folks are interested in our golf tournament, either as becoming a sponsor or playing in the tournament, probably the best thing to do is to go to our website, which is sanjuandems.org, and they can get information, see our flyers, and get in contact with us about that. But we're going to have a fun time.
Okay.
And we're hoping people will come out to the golf tournament.
Very good. Saturday, July 10th at Riverview Golf Course in Kirtland.
That's right.
Wonderful.
Limber up your swing.
There you go. Somebody else, not me. You don't want me. Nobody wants me on their golf course. That's too many divots.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, but that's okay. This has been a great conversation, Eli. I appreciate you coming in. Thank you for talking with me about the Democrat Party of San Juan County.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you very much. That's Eli Pavlik. He is the chairman of the San Juan County Democrat Party, my guest here on KSJE.
What the authoritarian crackdown